Okay, so we are pleased today to have with us here at Juneau Gatineau Rotary Club on December 3rd, is that right? Our own Karen Carey, who's the Chancellor of the University of Alaska Southeast. And Karen, if you're ready, I'll just let you take it from here.
Well, thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. We can see you. There you go. It's coming up now. Got it.
So what I want to do today is just give you a bit of an update on what's happening on campus. As you probably know, we had a very positive accreditation in 2019 at UAS. We were recognized for our work with the Native Alaskan population of students, recognized for our work that we do with Ketchikan and Sitka, and how we really are one university, and how we work closely together and really make a great university here in Southeast Alaska. Of course, we've had some challenges. The budget has been a huge challenge and continues to be a challenge. We have a $1.5 million reduction we have to take for FY22, and I think we can get there. As you may know, there was a compact signed between the Board of Regents and the governor to do budget cuts over 3 years. So we're coming up on the end of that, and we're really hoping we don't get any more cuts. We are very thankful for Pat Pitney coming in and getting rid of the merger talk. And we feel really confident now that we can move forward at UAS and get UAS back on stable footing. So we're working really hard to make sure that UAS is stable for many years to come. And as you know, Rick retired in June, and I became, all right, there I am. I became the interim chancellor in late June. And Pat Pitney asked me if I would serve as the chancellor because of the stability. We want to make sure that we can get the university to a very stable place. So she keeps saying and has really encouraged everyone to think about having 3 separately accredited universities, one in Fairbanks, one in Anchorage, and one in Southeast. So that's good news for us. Right now, this fall, we have over 2,000 students. We thought we would take a much bigger hit in terms of students coming to school, but we're only down about 5%. So we feel good about that students did come to school, and our applications and enrollment for spring are looking really good too. In terms of COVID, we did have 7 students who tested positive for COVID. We quarantined our housing units, and we don't have any currently on any cases on campus right now. They all did their quarantine and came out safe and secure. So we're glad about that. And again, the budget continues to be a problem. So we keep working on that. But our future is bright at UAS, and we're working hard to increase enrollment and retention of our students. Our programs are strong, and our faculty are really engaged in research and creative activities. So I invited Dave Tallman to come and speak to you today about some of the work he's doing, because our faculty are top rate, and I really want people to know that about UAS and what we do. So Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. And remind me for how long you'd like me to talk?
I would guess about 15 minutes. Is that
okay?
Sound okay?
That's great. All right, now I'm going to try to share my screen. So let me know if
I'm trying to stop mine, and
okay.
I had trouble with this yesterday. Thank you. I think Amy helped me there.
I did that to you, Karen.
Thank you.
All right, can folks see a screen with a couple people on it? And okay, fine. All right, great. Thanks. So Thanks everybody for being here. I know it's been a rough few days with these storms, not a lot of sleep and a lot of unwanted excitement. So I appreciate you showing up early to this meeting. Karen asked me to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing down at the Ock Creek Weir. And so I'll maybe talk for a few minutes about that work to all of you. So the Ock Creek Weir is located right next to the UAS campus. I'm always amazed by how many folks who live in Juneau don't know about the Ock Creek Weir, and thousands of people drive their cars by it every day on their way out the road or back in. And for me, it's been a fantastic experience. So if you look at this map, here's Ock Lake, UAS main campus, here's the Weir, and my office is actually right here on Ock Bay. And you may or may not know that it actually, the salmon of Ock Lake were one of the initial attractants to the Occoquan Tlingit when they dispersed up here from the Stikine watershed hundreds of years ago. There's oral history and written history suggesting that, in fact, the sockeye on Ock Lake were one of the things that attracted them to this area. And there's evidence of smokehouses and fish camps along Ock Creek. And if you look here in this slide in the lower left, you can see a picture dated to 1915, which I think is right on taken right at the mouth of Ock Creek, although it's not stipulated. You can see in the background, here's Ock Mountain. So anyway, it's a fantastic spot and has been recognized as such for a really long time. The amazing thing about the Weir from a researcher perspective is that every single fish that goes in and out of that stream is counted. So every single sockeye, pink, coho gets counted by hands, either migrating out to the ocean as juveniles or coming back as adults to spawn. And so it provides this amazing data set that's really unrivaled in any other place. So here you see a number of the species that are hand counted at the Weir. So from a biologist perspective, it's a really fantastic place to be based. And one of the things that I want to emphasize is that I've been a part of research down at the Weir for about a decade now. And one of the things that's been really satisfying is to see students come through and work at the Weir and get involved in research. We've had, in the time I've been there, about 20 students come through. So far, we're batting 1,000 in terms of the number of students who have graduated or who are on course to graduate. Students have gotten involved in published research. We've had a few who have gone on to master's and PhD programs, including going out to Lena Point and finishing master's at UAF College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences. So that's been really gratifying. One of the things I want to make sure to highlight is that we've had support for these students from local businesses, Alaska Glacier Seafoods, Icicle when they existed, DIPAC have been super generous at providing funding for these students. And we've also been able to leverage the high quality data we have down there to obtain funding from sources like the North Pacific Research Board, the National Science Foundation. So that's been really fun to watch a host of students come through and go on to careers in marine biology or fisheries. And I'll just talk a little bit about a couple of the recent projects we've got going on down at the Weir. And that's been done in collaboration with the folks who work for NOAA Fisheries, in particular Scott Volsteck and Josh Russell, as well as Megan McPhee, who's out at CFOS. And I'd just highlight Josh Russell, who actually came to UAS as an ANSTEP student from Palmer, got his bachelor's at UAS, finished his master's at CFOS out at Lena, and is now working for National Marine Fisheries Service at the Weir. So as I mentioned a few times, the Weir really provides amazing data for research, and I really think it's unequaled anywhere in the range of Pacific salmon. So specifically, we've got a complete count of the fishes from 1980 through this year. Every single fish is hand counted. So we have migration data and age and length and sex data for all of those fishes. For things like coho, we've collected DNA samples for over the last decade, and they're also coated wire tagged, which is hugely important for ADFG management of coho fisheries in Southeast Alaska. And so we have really great migration timing data, and we've been able to show evidence of earlier migration as the climate's changing. And we also have great environmental data that go along with this weir. So just to highlight a couple of projects to give you guys a feel for the kinds of things that we do or have done. One example project is environmental DNA. So essentially eDNA is the idea that you can collect DNA from the environment and make inferences about wild populations. It's kind of like CSI. One particular project that you see up here, we used water samples downstream of fishes to test whether or not we were able to correctly determine the number of fishes upstream. And because Ock Creek Weir provides daily counts of all the fishes upstream, we know how many fishes are upstream. So we can collect water samples downstream and figure out whether or not we can accurately infer what we know to be true in terms of the number of fishes upstream. And this was a collaboration with a host of different universities, organizations, including the Chinese Academy of Sciences, who I've never had the good luck to work with previously. So again, I think another thing to highlight is just that the weir provides a really great spot for working with people from really all over the Juneau community and beyond. And the reason that we were interested in this question is because if you can think about it, you know, salmon fisheries are a huge business in Southeast Alaska, worth hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And in fact, there's a small number of streams that are actually used to make management decisions in terms of harvest and allocation. And eDNA poses a potentially really cheap way to determine how many fishes are in a stream or the escapement if it can work properly. And so essentially we're trying to ask, can we cheaply infer the number of fishes upstream or escapement and use that for improving management? And so I'm not going to go into the gory details because I don't have a whole lot of time, but the fact of the matter is that it worked way better than we anticipated. And I'll just skip ahead here and show you that we looked at sockeye and coho over 2 years, collecting water samples and seeing whether or not those water samples, which are shown here, the data that come from that in blue, would accurately predict the true numbers, which are shown in black. And you can see that it actually worked amazingly well, way better than I expected. In fact, I didn't believe it at first, but just with simple information about eDNA counts and stream flows, you can quite accurately tell how many fish are upstream or escapement numbers, which provides a relatively cheap way to go and sample water, make inferences from that water, and know how many fishes are upstream. And so this is one project that we just recently completed, and it's been published and gone through peer review and is really exciting. Another project that I'll just mention really quickly, and I don't think I'll go into any detail again because I don't know that there's time, is this is in collaboration with Megan McPhee out at CFOS. We've been able to ask questions about the spawning success of full-sized salmon versus jack or small males that come back to spawn, jack salmon, and look at questions related to state policies on hatchery mating regulations. So, you know, state genetic policy requires minimizing the genetic impacts on wild populations. And as a result of that, there are practices used in hatcheries like random mating. But there's possible side effects of that maybe aren't at first apparent. So if you randomly mate individuals but exclude jacks, you might actually be excluding the fishes that grow fastest, which is counterintuitive. But because jacks are the fastest growing males, if there's a genetic component to growing fast, by excluding those males, you may actually select against fast or large, fast growing and large females. So you may actually be decreasing the size of your stock inadvertently. And so essentially, again, because of the great data we have at Ock Creek Weir, where we've counted all the fishes, we know their lengths, and we've taken DNA samples, we can assign the offspring back to their parents, and we know the size of their parents and the size of the offspring. And so we can make inferences about the effects of making selections of individuals to propagate their genes to the next generation on the size of those offspring. And so it's a really, and again, it's a unique opportunity created only because we've got this amazing weir. Every fish is counted. Data have been collected for 40 years, 10 years of genetic data, and we're able to take advantage of that to inform management and also do some really cool science and provide opportunities to students. So anyway, right now we have a bunch of samples that are being analyzed, and there are 256 genetic markers are being analyzed. We sent those data off to be created, and then they'll be returned to us. And we have a master student co-advised by Megan McPhee and myself who will analyze those data. So anyway, that's two projects that we've got going on at Ock Creek. There's a host of other ones. And one of the things that I want to emphasize is that because this weir has been up for so long and has such detailed data, it really provides a unique research opportunity that I don't think people appreciate. It also provides us a competitive advantage in applying for grants. And so we've been able to bring in grants worth hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, myself and others who have worked and done research down there, that filters through our community. Because we've got these great data, we're more competitive for grants, we bring in that money, it pays for salaries, it pays for supplies, and that stuff all benefits Southeast. The other things are that, you know, it's really important for salmon management, the questions that we're able to ask and answer. And then again, it's been a great launching pad for a large number of scientists who have started out there as summer interns working at the weir and who have gone on to careers in the state. And that's been really fun to watch. So that's sort of a brief overview of some of the recent things going on at the weir. And I'd be happy to take any questions if there's time, or emails if there's not time.
Dave, this is Karen. Can you just talk a minute about the grant you just got?
Yeah, sure. So as of yesterday, just heard from the National Science Foundation that we got a $650,000 grant for 5 years to support scholarships for 22 students from Alaska Native or rural backgrounds to get STEM degrees at UAS. And so we're really excited about this because it'll provide opportunities for all of these students and also help boost our enrollments in STEM, and obviously provide, you know, training to people whose expertise is needed for managing our resources. So that was a huge, yeah, that was a big one. We just found out about that one yesterday.
Thanks. We're happy to take any questions.
I've got a question. So how many, ooh, you guys still see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Oh, okay. My computer just wigged out. How many fish do you estimate come back to Auk Lake, and how many fish do you think go back out to sea or spawn go back?
Yeah, so, you know, it really varies among the species, and it varies from year to year. So for pink salmon, that's the biggest run that we have. And they're, you know, the high numbers, about 29,000 spawners one year. This year was close to our record low, around 1,200 spawners. So huge variation in the number of spawners. And then we also have sockeye and coho that run through there, and those are on the order of low hundreds and low thousands at their, so there's huge variation. And then in terms of the outmigration, you know, we've got thousands and thousands of coho and sockeye that outmigrate, and then tens of thousands of pinks every year that are outmigrating as juveniles. And also with the pinks, it really varies whether it's an odd or an even year. So odd years are really strong runs, and even years have been much weaker in the past decade, especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, Dave, you said you had 40 years of data. Can you tell us, kind of following up on that Doug's question, if you look back 40 years, what were the runs like 40 years ago compared to today? There's been a lot of development, particularly on the eastern streams that were spawning, particularly for the red salmon, were spawning streams at one time. Has that impacted the overall runs in there?
Yeah, good question, John. So it's hard to say if that development has been a negative impact. Definitely in recent years, we've had pretty low runs of everything. Some of the lowest runs we've had have been in the last few years. I think there's something to a reduction in spawning habitat and perhaps water quality affecting coho and sockeye in the last decade or two. So that would be consistent with, what you're getting at. And probably also a reduction in spawning habitat for pink salmon in recent years, just because, when they put in the highway, they put in a bunch of riprap and built up the pink salmon spawning habitat. And over time, the stream has sort of washed a lot of that out. So there's been some impact of that as well on the pink salmon. But really, in the last few years, everything is down, and everybody's trying to figure out why that is. If it's the warm blob, if it's shifting in harvest patterns, all those things. And if I had the answer, I'd be rich and famous. And it's not for wanting. I mean, there's a lot of people trying to figure out what's going on, and we don't really know. It's probably a lot of little things adding up, paper cuts. But yeah, it's been tough the last few years.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Rosemary. You're on mute, Rosemary.
Dave, I was kind of intrigued when you started to talk about some of your data on the size of the fish. When I first moved to Southeast in the 60s, it seemed like not only was there more abundance, but especially the king salmon were much larger. It wasn't at all uncommon. And even back in the 80s, it wasn't at all uncommon to pick up lots of big kings. And that just doesn't happen anymore. Is the research you're doing right now provide some answers on that, or is it a disconnect?
Yeah, good question. That's another huge one. So we don't actually have a king run in Ock Creek. So we don't have data on king salmon in particular. We have looked at the sockeye, coho, and pinks, and there's sort of a weak trend in a few of those species and age classes towards smaller size, but nothing real strong. There's definitely data that have come out in the last couple of years across larger geographic areas of Alaska, in particular from Daniel Schindler down at University of Washington, showing that there's definitely been some effects of harvest and climate change on sockeye and king salmon. So yeah, there's some recent indicators.
I can remember some years when we were out fishing and the cohos ranged between 18 and 22 pounds. I mean, which is really huge for a coho. And I don't know if that was an anomaly or if there's some of your research reaches back into those data years.
Yeah, we have data going back to 1980 and even longer for some of the species. And there's definitely some weak trends, but one of the I guess the limitations of Ock Creek is that it's just one stream.
Yeah.
And it'd be nicer to have 10 or 20 streams to make that, because then you have greater power to detect a pattern if it exists, you know what I mean? And so there's some slight indications of decreasing coho in Ock Creek. It's just not super strong.
Amy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to say to Karen, I agree that you're very fortunate to have Pat Pitney. I think she was a power on as OMB director, and now a good fit for the university. And I also wondered if you had any comments as of yet about how the effects of COVID are playing out with regard to, student enrollment and students deferring their programs and students being interested in different programs. I'm sure it's just a changing landscape up there. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on how that's going to play out from what you know so far.
Well, from what we know so far is we did have a decrease in enrollment, which we believe is due to COVID. But our students keep telling us that we did a great job in dealing with it. And I think that, of course, the sooner we can get back to face-to-face classes, the better. We do have classes that are face-to-face. So some of Dave's classes, other science labs are face-to-face. Our carving classes face-to-face, ceramics. Our classes down at the tech and welding, power diesel, those classes, they're all face-to-face because there's not really a good way to teach without, you've got to teach those classes face-to-face. And of course, we're using Hal's Humanities Shields in all of those classes to make sure the students stay safe. We're also using plexiglass between the students and the faculty member. I think that if it can, so we think our enrollments we think our applications are up for spring, primarily because students who thought about taking a gap year, who might have been going down south, have had a semester off and figure they might as well do something and are signing up for classes at UAS, which we can help them with, getting their general education requirements completed. And we have advisors that are working with those students. So if they are planning to go somewhere out of state, we can make sure that any classes they're going to take will transfer. So overall, I think we're doing really well. We have not had the outbreak, of course, of COVID like UAA and UAF have. And we feel really fortunate. Our students have been following the rules. Our faculty have done a great job in working with them. Of course, there's a lot of issues related to mental health, which we've been addressing and making sure that they feel like they're supported. We've had a lot of virtual interaction activities for them, doing cooking together, everything you can think of, we've done. How to date online, all that kind of stuff that students are interested in doing. So really trying to be supportive of them and making sure that they're okay. So it's been a big job, but we feel really good about where we are right now with COVID.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Karen.
Amy.
Got time for one more question. Anybody have any questions? You go to the next page. Anybody over here? All right. Well, thank you, Karen. David, very impressive with the hockey.
Doug, I think we should suggest to Karen that she comes back and we do a thing on how to date online. That seems pretty interesting.
Yeah, John. You see, your kids were old enough to where they didn't have to date online sometimes. And every once in a while, I got to see what dating online looked like. And it wasn't